I remember as a young PhD student, we were sent to the University of Sussex for a summer course. In those days, the University of Sussex at Falmer closed down for most of the summer. And there were 40 of us PhD astrophysicists. There was one pub open, that's all. I mean, even the flies went home over the summer vacation. And I remember one night with a very, very bright young astrophysicist who proved to me the non-existence of God over an hour in the pub. Well, that's what it felt like. Completely showed me that rationally God shouldn't exist. My name's David Wilkinson, and I work for a project based here at St. John's College in Durham University called Equipping Christian Leadership in an Age of Science. A few years ago, a number of us felt that when senior church leaders, like bishops or their equivalents, were asked about science, their immediate reaction was either fear, negativity, or panicked silence. What can I say about such things? And so we started a project where we wanted to work with senior leaders of the church to enable them to see science as a gift from God, how to use it responsibly, and therefore to engage with it with joy and confidence and humility rather than with fear. Very early in my Christian life, I came to the conclusion that if I said that Jesus was Lord, then that was a statement not just about what I did on a Sunday in worship. That was a statement about the whole of life. I was faced with the question, how is Jesus Lord over how I work as a scientist? And what does science mean in relationship to the Lordship of Jesus? So in one of the first churches that I led in Liverpool, we had a luncheon club, weekly luncheon club for the elderly. There was a woman there who was, I think, about 80. She'd left school at the age of 14, grew up and lived her life in Liverpool. I used to wander around the tables and chat when I sat down beside this woman, and she turned to me and she said, "Now then, David, tell me what the significance of Stephen Hawking's quantum gravity is for belief in God." And that, of course, surprised me. But more and more, I have found that people were interested in these big questions of how science interacted with faith. And because of the background that I had, I could both contribute to that conversation, but also learn a great deal from it. Actually, how to communicate in terms of Christian faith, that science can both enrich our faith, it sometimes challenges our faith, and sometimes it becomes a way for us to live out a vocation. My own journey came not through the science-religion type arguments. My own journey to Christian faith came because of Jesus. As people talk to me about some of the rational arguments of whether God created the universe, whether he was the designer or the first cause, those were secondary arguments. That I knew God existed and that what God was like because of Jesus. And so with fellow scientists or those who've asked me about science and faith, I always want to be explicit about bringing Jesus onto the table of conversation. And I'm not worried or embarrassed about that. That's just, I think, for me, part of the conversation. I remember as a young PhD student, we were sent to the University of Sussex for a summer course. In those days, the University of Sussex at Falmer closed down for most of the summer. And there were 40 of us PhD astrophysicists. There was one pub open, that's all. I mean, even the flies went home over the summer vacation. And I remember one night with a very, very bright young astrophysicist who proved to me the non-existence of God over an hour in the pub. Well, that's what it felt like. Completely showed me that rationally God shouldn't exist. And so I went back to one of the student bedrooms where we were accommodated and thinking to myself, I've only been a Christian for a few years, and now, I mean, all of it seems untrue. God doesn't exist. This guy has proved it to me. And in those days, the Gideons used to produce Bibles, and those were even let into student rooms. And so I just picked up this Bible and read again the stories of Jesus. And at that point I realized that actually these rational arguments, however powerful they were rational arguments about a God who perhaps wasn't the God of Jesus. The God who was the God of the philosophers rather than the God of the Bible. And I suddenly realized just how important it was to keep perspective on these things. And so I hope in conversation with those who have problems with science and faith, I do want to take those questions seriously. I do think that we can say a lot about them. But I want to keep this perspective that when we come to Christian faith, the core is about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, through whom God speaks.